Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. This is the July meeting for the Ttcda. Welcome. It's good to see all the smiling faces out in the crowd. I believe we have a quorum today. We do. And so, approval of minutes. You guys would have gotten the minutes. I'll entertain a motion for approval.
I'll make a motion to approve. I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Also.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right, we'll jump into the applications for certificates of appropriateness. First up, we have Taylor D. Forrester Long, representing 6-A-23-TOR, the east side of Lovell Road, north of Lovell View Drive, and south of Alameda Drive, rezoning from OB, TO to CA and TO zoning districts. All right. Can you get a staff report, please?
Sure. So the subject property abuts single-family residential uses on the northern and eastern property lines. There are also single-family lots across from Lovell Road. Actually, let me get my laser pointer up for you. There we go. So just a little bit of history of the site. So according to aerial views, a second building was built between 2003 and 2007. Then the second building was demolished between 16 and 18. In 2019, significant grading of the site occurred. And then in 2023, a landscaping business began its operations on the site. So the property is currently zoned OB, which stands for Office, Medical, and Related Services. The applicant recently adjusted, let's see. Yeah, so so when the application was first filed, the business model was such that a large pile of mulch would be delivered to the site for individuals and or small businesses to visit the site and take mulch needed from the pile. The landscaping business has since removed the mulch pit from the site and would no longer be engaged in that component of the business. They will now store service trucks, landscaping equipment, and above-ground fuel tanks at this location. We partnered with Knox County Department of Codes Administration and Enforcement, and they have classified this as a contractor's storage yard. So now getting into the zoning, a contractor's storage yard would not be allowed under the OB zone, so the applicant is requesting the CA or general business zone in order to bring the business under compliance with the zoning ordinance. Zoning ordinance describes the CA zone as intended to provide for general retail businesses and services, but not for manufacturing or processing materials. Rezoning should be based on the entire range of uses allowed within a zone to ensure that any development brought forth at a future time would be compatible with the surrounding land uses. There are several uses in CA that would be allowed by right, but that would not be compatible with adjacent single-family development. And there's some of these listed in the staff report. There's poultry businesses, hotels, motor vehicle repair shops, school bus storage, and then there's others allowed as a use on review that also would not be appropriate, and those include commercial mulching operations, composting facilities, and contractor storage yards. So looking at the future land use map, the future land use class identified in the sector plan is office. And this is prevalent along this stretch of Lovell Road. The office land use class does not allow the CA zone, so the applicant needs to amend the sector plan to be able to rezone the property. This board is only voting on the rezoning, though, not on the sector plan amendment, as sector plan amendments do not require Ttcda approval. As far as the existing use of the land, this shows that surrounding properties along Lovell Road and otherwise abutting the property consist predominantly of single-family lots and vacant land, despite the office and commercial zoning prevalent along Lovell Road. Lovell Road is a minor arterial, which is typically where office and commercial uses would be appropriate. However, in this case, the thoroughfare is lined with single-family residential lots along much of its length at this location, and the subject parcel is adjacent to residential properties on the west. Planning believes the existing zoning and sector plan designation are the appropriate designations for this property. Less intrusive commercial zones, such as NC, or the neighborhood commercial, or PC planned commercial, would be more appropriate, but these zones do not allow the existing landscaping business. So as for the standards for approval, these are outlined in the Ttcda administrative rules and procedures. The first is conformity of the proposed rezoning with the Ttcda comprehensive plan, which is the equivalent of the design guidelines. And in the general plan, one of the development policies is to protect residential areas from encroaching commercial development and other incompatible uses. Another policy, the general plan, is to protect neighborhoods from intrusive uses, declining public facilities, and other blighting influences. A third is to ensure the context of new development does not impact existing neighborhoods and communities. And a fourth is to discourage environmental nuisances in the vicinity of residential development. And looking at the sector plan regarding that criteria, there's only one property designated with the GC land use along Level Road, and that's not in the immediate vicinity. So you have to kind of scroll pretty far out to get to GC. It's either across Pellissippi Parkway this way or near Murdoch Drive and Dutchtown Road before you get to GC. The vast majority of properties are designated as office, MDR, which is medium density residential, LDR, which is low density residential, and this requested land use class is out of character with the area. CA zone's not consistent with the Northwest County Sector Plan's office land use designation, and we also don't feel like the sector plan amendment to the GC to allow that CA amendment would be appropriate at this location. This is just a slide showing the general commercial. If you pull up the land use classification within that sector plan, this is how it's described, which is basically what we just talked about. It talks about existing commercial corridors and when circumstances when it should be extended, it should not be established anew, those sort of things. And then getting into the aerial view, this is kind of a better view showing the existing residential neighborhood development that extends along this way, and again, the single family across the street. And as stated previously, some of the uses allowed in CA have the potential to cause adverse impacts on surrounding properties, including the use intended for the site, since the area largely consists of single-family residential. There's no trends in development, population, or traffic that warrant reconsideration of the sector plan, and therefore we're still holding to denial of this application based on the fact that it doesn't meet the Ttcda criteria. As part of the applicant's business, there are above-ground fuel tanks. These were added after the drone flyover, taking the images, so they're not visible on this image, but there are some on the site. And then just kind of zooming in a little bit closer to see what that actually looks like. So that's kind of a little bit closer. You can see a little bit more of the piles and the trucks and things like that. And so we're recommending denial because the request doesn't meet the criteria for rezoning, and the applicant is present, and I'm able to answer questions if anyone has any.
Thank you, Michelle. Appreciate that. Any questions for Michelle? All right, not having any questions. Do we have someone here for the applicant that would like to speak? Please give us your name and address.
Taylor Forrester, 1111 North Shore Drive, Knoxville, Tennessee, here on behalf of the applicant and property owner, Mr. Randall Kinney. Some of you may be familiar with this property. Mr. Kinney has owned and operated Kinney Sharpening for a number of years at this location. A couple years ago, Mr. Kinney leased a portion of the building and the back portion of the property to Bright Grove Landscape Company for the use of its operations, such as its office, which it uses inside the building, and then storage of material and trucks. Unbeknownst to either party, assuming that since there was already commercial use with Kinney Sharpening being allowed on the property, they wrongfully assumed that that this would also be permitted under the zoning ordinance. There were some complaints filed with codes. Codes sent notice, hence why we filed for the rezoning and sector plan amendment request. Initially requested a CB rezoning because we did have some mulch pile or mulch pits on the property. Now those were strictly for Bright Grove Landscaping's business, where they would load them up each day and then take them to different job sites around Knox County. Those, after hearing some of the complaints and some of the issues, reviewed this, considered alternates, and removing those mulch pits would allow a contractor storage yard in the CA zone. Another consideration in doing that was considering the neighborhood, and some of the complaints that have been raised is that in order to get a contractor storage yard approved in the CA zone, it would require a use on review. That would allow further discussion, landscape plans to be shown, submitted and approved by the Planning Commission where there could be public comment and opinion given. I have with me, and I'd like to pass those out. So this kind of shows a proposed layout, future layout, if the rezoning and sector plan amendment happened to be approved, as to how the site would be improved. As you can see, it's largely barren right now, and a lot of dirt areas and just kind of open, exposed areas to the residential neighborhood. But like I said, if the rezoning was approved, sector plan, this is the proposed implementation of the screening, landscaping, future site layout. Believe this would provide a clear buffer and that would shield the neighborhood from any activity going on in this site. There is there is CA property in the immediate vicinity along Level Road. There's also a large portion of CB property that would be south of the site. There are other similar uses along Level Road within this area that are contractor storage yards. One that comes to mind that's right down the street is Mercer's Tree Service. They operated there. They store their trucks, their equipment. So there is support. There is factors that would support a rezoning, in my opinion, to the CA general commercial zone. So thank you.
Any questions? All right, do we have a representative to speak for the opposition? If you could give us your name and your address, please, for the record.
That's Jeff Newman, 1105 Veneto Drive. First thing I suggest Mr. Forster do is go take a tour of his client's property. Those pictures that you see up there are not indicative of what it looks like today. The mulch piles that he said were removed are not. I have a picture on my phone right now that I took as I got in my car to leave. Some of the stone wall that encompassed those were removed, but the mulch was not. Matter of fact, there have been 2 more piles added beside them. The fuel tank still exists. We have had multiple promises that were made and not kept from the time that Bright Grove moved in, from the installation of a wooden fence that we would not be able to see that. People's yards being repaired and then told that they weren't going to be, and many other things that have happened. We don't feel like that even promised, like we were supposed to get a copy 3 weeks to a month ago of these proposals, when if it were approved, what it would look like. There again, we've not seen anything. As far as Mercer's and the other construction, and they didn't bother to show a satellite view of those, Mercer's does not back up to any residential area, and there is a plethora of forest and trees behind their property that keeps them from being, observed or anything by anyone around them. Because our subdivision basically stops right there where that cul-de-sac, as you see on the bottom right-hand corner of the picture, is, and that is where the residents stop. Mercer's is way on down from that. So it doesn't really apply because it's surrounded by the businesses and stuff that are on Dutchtown Road, Murdoch Road, and in that area like US Cellular. We have not seen anything. They have come and knocked on our door to try to convince us to support them being there, but yet they've not even walked the fence line and picked up the trash in our backyards. It's up against the fence, plastic bags that are hanging from our trees that have blown out of their dumpsters. We just don't feel like as a neighborhood or community that we can continue. I mean, it's brought our property down. I've talked to real estate people, 2 different ones that have said that the average property along that fence line has been devalued on an average of about $30,000. And if you look at what our homes are valued versus what homes in other part of the subdivisions that are not even as in good a shape as ours are going for, there is about a $30,000 to $35,000 difference in selling price. So we just don't feel like it's going to be indicative for us or future generations to live there based on, what we've experienced for the past 2.5 to 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Carol Humphrey. I live at 10716 Alameda Drive. I'm on the corner of Alameda and Level Road. I will echo those comments. Mulch piles are still there. I'm not sure why anybody thinks they're gone, because they're not gone. Mincers also way down the road, nowhere near us. It does not appear that Bright Grove has any physical location other than the one that we're discussing here today. There's no office address for them. They have a P.O. box. That's it. So basically, all of their equipment and all of their resources are stored there. That includes multiple vehicles of various types and sizes. They have the Bright Grove landscaping on them. They are definitely their vehicles. There's a porta potty. There are multiple mounds of mulch. There's at least one large fuel tank of some type, and they come, the fuel people come and refuel it. It looks like about once a week, in and out of there. There's a dumpster. There's mounds of dirt, debris, brush, and trash, including pieces of pallet, miscellaneous construction equipment. We are obviously concerned about the mulch, not only the odor and the hazard to pets, but the fire hazard that exists there if you aren't exercising extreme care. And these mulch piles are so close to the residences that it could be a disaster if that were to happen. Multiple trees have been cleared, which makes all of this visible to all of us. You cannot see it if you drive by on Level Road and look off to the left or the right. You can't see it. The way the topography is, you can't see it. It's not visible from the road, but we can all see it. I was also told a fence would be perimeter privacy fence would be put up, and that would make it a little bit easier for us to deal with it. There's no fence. Some trees have been planted along some other neighbors of mine property lines. I have not had any trees. The noise from the beeping machinery and the land clearing is very intrusive. My house vibrates when they're working to clear land over there. Given the nature of their business, they start early and they come back in late. So it's an all-day affair, and it usually includes Saturday as well. We were not provided with any advance notice that this was going to happen. We had no disclosure this was going to happen. And we're not allowed to object on the front end to maybe keep Bright Grove from establishing and investing their resources there in the first place. That's part of the reason we feel like we cannot rely on anything that we've been told or will be told by Bright Grove. We feel like this disturbs the quiet enjoyment of our property. This is an unreasonable disruption, and in fact, I believe it's a nuisance. We basically want to cultivate a family atmosphere. These are residences. Bright Grove's mission statement includes that they want to provide assurances to residents and relieve stress for the residents that they service, and they have done anything but that for us. And we're just asking for the same. So that, among many other reasons, that's one reason. Those are some reasons that I'm opposed to this being approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Marshall Connor. I'm here with my wife Vicki, and our property is located at 1109 Veneto Drive. If you don't mind, I'm going to read from a letter that we sent to the commission about the issue we're discussing today. Our property, again, is located 1109 Veneto Drive in the Level View subdivision. Kenny Sharpening on Level Road across the corner of our backyard. The owner cut down the beautiful mature trees along the fifth row of several homeowners' properties on Alameda Drive and Veneto Drive, revealing the unsightly commercial property. We spoke to the owner about his plans, and he said he was planning to create parking spaces for RVs, boats, etc., and he would add a fence around the property. But instead of a fence, he planted a row of pine trees that will probably mature in about 5 to 10 years. Currently, nothing is hidden from our view at 1109. Parked there are several commercial vehicles and Bright Grove landscaping vehicles, which we see from our sun porch. And there's a pile of dirt was dug in the direction of a large concrete bay. The dirt is piled up alongside where my property lies. And driving up to our driveway, the first thing you see now is a huge pile of dirt, which we'll probably have to look at until the trees mature. We're awakened every morning by construction sounds of beeping, banging, and scraping of large trucks delivering mulch, and then backhoes loading it onto work trucks. This goes on all day, every day. The smell is unpleasant, and we also know that mulch can build up heat and spontaneously catch fire. Mulch fires start readily when the weather is hot and has been dry for an extended time. When the waste management truck empties their trash bin, what falls out ends up blowing into our yard. So we have all kinds of trash, plastic, any other type of trash. We have picked up bottles, tarps, cups, and styrofoam containers from our yard. We're having to clean up their trash. We are convinced that this operation will devalue our property should we ever decide to put it up for market for sale. We're not happy with the landscaping business, and if it's not legal, we would like to see it shut down. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to go ahead and have discussion among the commissioners. If you have questions or comments related to the issue.
I have two questions for the applicant about the plan that was submitted. Understanding this plan could only be implemented if zoning were changed. The two questions are, a fence is not illustrated on the plan. Is the intent to provide a fence, an opaque fence?
Yes, I think they had it settled on putting a fence in. Fence in addition. Again, it'd be contingent on the rezoning to do that type of investment with the landscaping and the fencing.
Second question, in reference to the pine trees that were just mentioned that have been planted, where are those located?
Are those located along the north property line?
So yes, my name's Sean Kinney.
Give your address.
My name's Sean Kinney. My address is 1329 Wenlock. My parents are the owners of 1110 Level Road. Yes, so we did plant, there was talks of fences and the trees. We did plant the trees along the north and most of the back side, which would be the, I guess, the east side, that those trees did get planted. Right now, the initial plan, and we do hear what these residents have to say, and it did unfortunately get, so when Bright Grove started, there was like 3 or 4 trucks, and then it quickly escalated from there. But as you can see with that new drawing, we can add a fence. I'm willing to work with the neighbors. I understand. It looks like a wreck out there. I do completely understand that. The fuel tanks are leaving. Unfortunately, it costs money and it takes time to get an entire business moved. Bright Grove does have another piece of property that they are working towards relocating most all of the trucks, the mulch, the fuel tanks, the porta potty. So that would alleviate really all of the mowing trucks, all of the storage, like I said, the mulch, the fuel tanks, pretty much everything that goes on early or late or on Saturday would be removed from that piece of property. And then, like I said, with that drawing, if it does get rezoned or we can work out something where the rest of what they are doing can stay, all the rest of the stuff is negotiable. If the residents want a fence and we can come to an agreement, we'll put up a daggum fence. That doesn't matter. But like I said, that's the drawing that was come up with, that we could come up with real quick. And if there's any other questions, I can answer questions also.
Thank you. Just to clarify, this drawing does not include any pine trees. It lists the species that are proposed. So would the intent be to,
I didn't remember what that, I'd only seen this drawing for a moment. No, so when you're looking at the picture, I guess the way that they've got that drawing, that those trees are kind of encompassed in that row of shrubbery on that north side and the east side.
understood? Thank you.
Yep.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak quickly?
My name is Erica Foster. I live at 10704 Alameda Drive. And I have a direct view of this operation. And I'm at the side where all the, recently, they have moved all the trucks and we see all of this dirt. But in response to him saying that they're going to build a fence, it would have to be a heck of a tall fence because we live in split foyers, and we come off our deck and we're high. And we're not even that high, but we're high enough to see quite a bit. And so that would have to be a really tall, expensive fence, which in the past I heard they said they were going to build a fence, and then they said lumber prices were too expensive, and that's why that fence did not come up. And so that's I thought I needed to add that.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Gina Oster, 9536 Briarwood Boulevard, and I'm actually the District 3 County Commissioner. This was brought to my attention a few months ago. I went over and visited with quite a few of the neighbors, sat on their deck. When I say these neighbors take pride in their home and their yard, they do. And it really upset me to see what they have to endure when someone is running a business in a zone that it is not zoned for. Once I understood that Mr. Forrester was their attorney, I reached out to him, made it very clear that I was not in support of this being changed from office building due to the situation that was going on. When the last meeting happened, Ttcda, it was canceled. That gave this business another 30 days to be able to run out of zone. Knox County codes have gone over many a times. The last time that they went over, as I spoke to Steve Elliott, they gave a cease and desist, and that's when they hired Mr. Forrester. I understand that Lovell Road has businesses on it, but this is not a business as an office building that should be backing up somebody's property. We can't have a business that hinders, causes damage, and affects quality of life to existing neighbors. I do not believe this zoning should change from office building. Neighbors should not have to hear trucks beeping and backing up at 6:30. The neighbors shouldn't have to deal with the smell of mulch when they want to sit in their yards or their decks when the smell is overwhelming. The neighbors should not have to deal with trash blowing in their yards, and they certainly should not have to deal with water runoff and damage created by a company that is conducting business outside of the zone. I would ask this board to deny this rezone and keep it office building. This has been an emotional situation that should have never happened to these neighbors. We need to remember these neighbors have been living in these homes for many years, paying property taxes and raising their families. This is their largest investment, and we need to be considerate of that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board or comments? Go ahead.
The one thing I want to say to all the people that live around there matters. No matter how the vote goes, that the zone right now, the way this property is zoned right now, you could have very similar things there. So just no matter what happens, don't think that something else can't go there that's similar. Because if you read the zoning ordinance, the way it's zoned right now allows a whole lot of different things. So I just want y'all to be aware of that.
Just pull it down. It's not, speak into it.
Can you now?
No. Just speak up a little bit, project.
So what I was saying is the current zoning this property has right now has uses that are somewhat similar to what they do. So I just want you all to be aware that just because however this votes, it doesn't mean that something else could go.
I can kind of speak to that. So I've got the OB zone pulled up now. So under the uses permitted by right, it would allow the same uses as those in the RB, which is the general residential zone. It allows professional and business offices, cater to retail. No stock of goods is maintained for sale to customers. So they're talking about lawyers' offices, architect offices, engineers, insurance, that type of thing. Hospitals, clinics, medical, dental offices, funeral home. Does allow hotels and motels, except those containing retail sales, private clubs and lodges, art gallery, museums, business colleges, schools, commercial parking lot or garage, accessory buildings, incidental to those uses that are allowed, recreational uses, and then I'm kind of getting to the end of that list, yard sales, that type of thing. By uses permitted on review, it includes child daycares, assisted living facilities, methadone treatment clinic, pain management clinic, or recovery housing. Those, again, would be uses permitted on review, those last few, so those you would get notice of and they would go to the Planning Commission.
All right, any other questions or comments from the commissioners? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we comply with the recommendations of staff and deny the zoning change.
Okay, so I have a motion for the approval of the staff recommendation. I'm going to read this in just so we're clear. Deny the CA general business zone because it does not meet the criteria for approval in the Ttcda administrative rules and procedures and could cause adverse impacts for neighboring residential properties. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor of the denial?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The motion carries. It is denied. Okay, moving on to the next on our agenda is OM Holdings 6-A-23-TOS. It's at the southeast corner of the intersection of Hardin Valley Road and Valley Vista Road. Signed permit in the PC Planned Commercial with Conditions and TO Technology Overlay zoning districts. And it is County Commission District 6. Can I get a staff report, please?
Sure. So as Vice Chair was mentioning, this property is zoned PC. It does have a K designation. So just to be clear, the K designation indicates the rezoning case in which the PC zone was adopted. It had conditions for its approval. Those conditions were all met by the site plans. They're not relevant to the signage request. So just to be clear on that. The site is just off of Hardin Valley Road. It's southwest of the Pellissippi Parkway interchange. It's on the southeast side of Hardin Valley Road, which has been developed with commercial uses. The northwest side of the road to the south of Pellissippi Parkway remains single-family homes, except for the Pellissippi State Community College, though it's behind a row of single-family homes and doesn't front Hardin Valley Road directly. A little bit of history on this one, too. In 2008, the Ttcda approved a yard sign for the property. It met the design guidelines regarding the sign size, materials, and message contents. The previous sign remained on site until being replaced by the proposed and existing sign, which Google Street View shows occurred between May of 2018 and May of 2021. As part of that approval, the applicant was granted a waiver reducing the front setback on Hardin Valley Road to 15 feet and on Valley Vista Road to 10 feet. The new tenant directory sign replaced a large monument sign in the same location on this parcel without a permit. Upon seeking approval for a series of individual panels to be added to the existing sign structure, the applicant, who is the new property owner, discovered the sign had not been permitted and the sign was reviewed in its entirety at the January 23 Ttcda meeting. That request was denied. The applicant then requested to appeal the Ttcda decision to Knox County Commission, but the appeal deadline had expired. Ttcda administrative rules and procedures don't have a stipulation of time before an application for the same request can be submitted, so the applicant has applied for approval of the same sign. Neither the applicant nor the property owner attended the January meeting. Both parties were aware of the meeting date, time, and location, and were aware of staff's recommendation to deny the request. And then going into the criteria that you all are charged with when looking at judging these, as for standards of approval, the first one is conformity of the sign proposal with design guidelines. In terms of the sign locations, it's located approximately 18 feet from Hardin Valley Road as measured on KGIS and 50 feet from Valley Vista, so it no longer needs the waiver from Valley Vista Road, but would retain that waiver along Hardin Valley Road. So the waiver was for 15 feet, this is 18, and that works. So then regarding the sign material, it's made of stucco walls extending to the ground and bounded by treated wood trim on the top and sides of the sign. It's capped with a wood roof. This too meets Ttcda guidelines in terms of materials and colors, permanence, that sort of thing. In terms of sign lighting, the sign would be illuminated with screened ground-mounted lights. However, no light specifications have been provided, so it can't be determined if the lighting would be in compliance with Ttcda design guidelines at this time. As far as what was submitted initially for this proposal, they're looking at, this is the slats that would go, or the panels that would go on the sign. They would be brown with white letters. They're on treated wood risers, so they're separated from the actual sign. The Ttcda design guidelines don't have any size criteria for the individual panels. It's the size of the overall sign that's considered, so there wasn't any issue with the actual panels. There were, however, some conditions or some issues with the sign size. So this part falls under the section of the guidelines pertaining to subdivision and plan development signs. The maximum size allowed is 200 square feet, and that includes both sides of the sign. So they're allowed 100 square feet per side. Proposal is 220 square feet per side for an overall area of 440 square feet. So the sign exceeds the 200 feet square foot maximum and needs a waiver to increase the sign message area by 200% over that allowed for a planned subdivision and plan development sign. The second issue is the sign height. That also uses the subdivision and plan development sign section of the ordinance. The maximum height allowed is 12 feet. They're proposing 19.67 feet. So the sign exceeds the maximum allowed and also needs a waiver to increase the height maximum by 64% over that allowed. And just as a side note, the subdivision and plan development sign standards are already much more generous than any other sign type in the guidelines. So for example, if this was reviewed as a yard sign, it would need a 440% waiver for size and a 305% waiver for height. So this is just some street views to kind of give you guys an idea. So this was the original one that was installed that met all the guidelines except for the location. And then that's the new one. I think part of the issue too is that the bushes have grown so much taller. So like looking at the difference, the lower sign was still visible from Valley View Road, whereas the bottom half is not visible from Valley View. However, when you look at the Hardin Valley side, the whole part of the sign is visible. So the next criteria is relationship of the proposed signage to signage on nearby property in terms of size, location, materials, and color. So this sign is much larger than other signs in the area. There's very few yard signs along Hardin Valley Road. There's one for King University, Southeast Bank, Sherwin-Williams, and the Pellissippi State Community College. Those all meet the standard yard size requirements. So there's not another strip center that's utilized this particular provision. So there's nothing to compare it to with regard to a plan development or subdivision sign. And then you can kind of get an idea too, the sign kind of partially blocks the building behind it, and it kind of becomes a question of whether the sign would be really doing its job, because it might be easier to just read the signs on the building. So we are recommending denial of this one too, denial of the requested waivers, and therefore denial of sign as proposed because it does not meet the criteria for signage approval. I'm not sure if the applicant is present, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Michelle. Appreciate that. Any questions for Michelle? All right. Is anyone here from the applicants? Anybody opposed? All right. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we go with staff recommendations and deny.
So we've got a motion for approval for staff recommendations. A second.
Second.
We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries as per staff recommendation. Okay, moving on to next on the agenda, Giselle Baclini. If I said that wrong, you can hit me later. With George Armour Ewart Architect as a representative, 7-A-23-TOB, northwestern terminus of Corridor Park Boulevard, east of Level Road, building permit in the BP/TO zoning districts, County Commission District 3. Can we get a staff report, please?
Sure. So this 3.6 acre site is zone BP, TO. Office warehouses are allowed in the BP or Business and Technology Park zone. They're allowed, but site plans require approval by the Planning Commission, and this item scheduled for the July 13th Planning Commission meeting next week. This property backs up to a single-family residential neighborhood to the north, and the property to the west is under construction as an apartment complex. This is a bird's eye view, just kind of showing the context and the lay of the land. And then looking at the site plan, the warehouse office building is situated at the center of the site with parking in front. The building is placed at kind of an angle to the street. Access would be off the northwestern terminus of Corridor Park Boulevard. That's a local road 1 block north of the Dutchtown Road, a minor arterial. Access meets the standards of the Knox County Department in Engineering of Public Works, and the Stormwater Division had no comments on the plans. There is a stormwater detention area shown. It's existing. It's deemed sufficient to serve the proposed development. The site plan meets all of the design intensity metrics, so the ground area coverage, floor area ratio, impervious area ratio are all in compliance with the design guidelines. Ttcda guidelines require between 16 and 23 parking spaces. The applicant is proposing 30, so they need a waiver to increase that maximum number to 30 spaces. Staff's in support of that waiver since the increase is minimal and the plans are otherwise in compliance with the guidelines. And so looking at the building facades, this is the front facade. It kind of, again, it's at an angle to the street. Features aluminum siding on all facades and on the loading dock doors. On the main building entry, there's a storefront system capped with an aluminum canopy. And then there's a secondary entry down here, also capped with a smaller aluminum canopy. Use of metal panels and masonry block is prohibited, but it's not discouraged. They are showing some plantings along the building foundation that, as the trees mature and get taller, will screen the building materials from the street. The signage that's shown is conceptual only, so there's no signage included in this request. This is the view from the street as well. You can see that looking at the elevations, the building's slightly taller in the front than in the back, so there's a gentle slope to that. And there's a loading dock area that's, again, facing that street. So there's trees planted on the entry to the site that will screen the dock doors from the street. And this portion of Corridor Park Boulevard is situated off the main portion of the street, so it's kind of off the beaten path, and I don't think it's going to be very visible. There is another overhead door on the side of the street that's closer to the residents. But again, there's going to be a no disturb buffer of 30 feet on the plans. And this is kind of a view from where the apartment complex to the west would be situated, but there's going to be a no disturb buffer there as well. So neither one of those facades are expected to be visible once that is planted. The northeast view, again, or this is the side that faces, it says the apartments, but that's actually the side that would be close to the single-family residential. So this is the landscaping plan. You can see here the bubble line that kind of indicates the no disturb area. So planning requested a 25-foot no disturb area, the rear property line that abuts the single-family residential. And the plans exceed that with 30 feet. Along the multifamily, there's a 15-foot minimum that's prescribed by the zoning ordinance, and they meet that. So again, you can see here the plantings by the street that would help to kind of block the view of both the building materials and a little bit of the screening doors or the loading dock doors. Those are screened by these plants here. The landscaping plans otherwise meet the regulations. There's trees where they're supposed to be in the islands and within certain feet of parking spaces and things like that. The lighting plan, this is just a closer view of those plantings. And the lighting plan also, or I'm sorry, this is the grading plan, that just shows that same no disturbance area. And then the lighting plan, there was no waivers for any of the foot candle levels. The lighting plant levels are all meeting Ttcda guidelines. It's all full cutoff fixtures with LED lighting, and so that meets the criteria as well. And so planning's recommended approval because the request meets the Ttcda guidelines, and that includes that waiver for the increase in parking.
Thank you, Michelle. Any questions for Michelle? Is there anyone here to speak for the applicant?
Will Robinson, 1248 North Shorewood Lane, Caryville, Tennessee. I'm representing this project for the owner. It's a pretty straightforward project. I think it'll be an attractive asset for the development, and I'm happy to answer any questions you've got. The owner is also here.
Thank you, Will. Appreciate it. Any questions? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve per staff recommendation.
Do I have a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. All right, next on the agenda, Sanders Pace Architecture 7-B-23-TOB, east side of Sanctuary Lane, north of Dutchtown Road and south of Bob Gray Road. A building permit in the PC, TO zoning districts, County Commission District 3. Staff report, please.
Sure. So this is a request to build a brewery on the site. The existing structure would be a second structure, so it would be an infill development. However, the applicant has requested a 30-day postponement while the landscaping plan is developed, and staff supporting that. Recommend approval of the postponement.
Do I have a motion for approval for postponement?
I'll make a motion to postpone.
Second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
You can, or you can just have me do it.
You can do it.
David does that sometimes.
You can take care of it.
Okay. So the closing up the other business, we're reporting on the administrative reviews that were approved this month. First one of these was on Corridor Park Boulevard, just down the street from the one we just heard. This was for an office warehouse as well, also in the PCTO zone. And just to make something clear, the Corridor Park Boulevard is a public right-of-way, but this Discovery Lane, even though it functions like a street, looks like a street, is actually a private right-of-way. So the previously approved site plan, showed the building and the parking in front. There's a loading dock door here, but because this is a private right-of-way, it was not required to be screened. Nothing about this part of the site plan has changed. What they are proposing is a new side drive aisle this way for the parking of service vehicles. So those vehicles will be on site during the day, returning after business hours. So they would really only be parked during non-business hours. They would not be visible from the street parked back here. The spaces aren't striped just because they're not going to be permanent parking spaces. And because they are not included as parking for the general public, they don't increase the number of parking spaces that are provided to the public, therefore they don't exceed the maximum. And this was just, doesn't increase the building square footage, so it met all the criteria for an administrative approval for Ttcda, and these plans were approved on June 28th. So is there any questions about this one? Okay, so the next one was at 875 Cornerstone Drive. This was the U.S. Soccer Complex. This was approved as an apartment complex. This is next door to one of the developments we just heard, actually. The applicant is requesting approval basically just to change a few things around regarding the building plans. It's in the OBTO zone. It's adjacent to the recently developed apartments along Murdoch Drive and Cornerstone up here on the front. So this is going to be a different complex from the one to the south. So what they're doing, so each one of these colored ovals just kind of shows you how the buildings have shifted. So this blue was the community building. It shifted down to a different location, and then there are building types A and B that kind of flip-flopped. So this one moved to take the place of the community building, and then this one moved to replace that one. So the number of buildings has stayed the same. The overall square footage has stayed the same for the building types with the exception of the community building, but it actually lowered the ground area coverage for the building or for the site. So the previously approved site plan, so those are just showing the same things, how they changed from there to there. And then previously approved landscaping, again, they had to shift some things around to accommodate the new building, and no issues with any of that. These are the previously approved elevations for the community building. There were some slight changes here. Again, they're not really evident. These are the new elevations here. All the materials, the height, everything still meets Ttcda guidelines. Square footage did not increase by more than 5%. Therefore, it met the Ttcda administrative approval criteria, and we approved the drawings on June 28th. There was a third one that came through, but we have not received revisions yet. So that was, if you noticed, it went from A to C. So the designation of B will probably be on next month's agenda as a reporting, provided they get revisions before then.
Michelle, I had a question just about the 7-B-23-TOA, the Falconeer. So we didn't have any information on it. Was it postponed or?
So they're still working through their revised comments. So I wanted to see some specs on, so basically they were adding some site lighting to highlight the cross above their building. And the way the building was situated and the topography, it was adequately screened to prevent glare from passing vehicles, but it does face an apartment complex. And so I asked for a shield on the light to kind of block that glare, that light source from being seen in the apartment complex across the street. And so they haven't provided any of that yet. So I expect it to be approved. It should be a real easy thing. I just haven't received it yet to be able to do the final sign off.
Okay, any other business? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.